Last week, I said I wanted to look at more contemporary art, and I showed you States' Rights by Anne Herrero. This interest in showing off contemporary art isn't coming out of nowhere. On my stream, I made two segments on videos by the YouTuber The Cinema Cartography. The first one, The Illusion of Progress, was suggested to me by a loyal chatter who said it might be a bit fascist. You can watch my whole reaction to that video, but I ended the segment by saying this.
I don't think it's fascist. I think it has fascistic tendencies. I don't think cinema cartography is necessarily fascist. Let's say there's like a scales. Is this content creator fascist or not? Does it give a bit of weight to the fascist? Sure, but it doesn't mean that he is a fascist. Of course, if he talks about how Western art has become degenerate, then
2 to 3 weeks later, the Cinema Cartography published a video called, and I'm not joking, Degeneracy. I made a segment reacting to that video as well. It's on my second channel, but in it, they say this.
Art becomes reduced to a mere product, manufactured for mass consumption, rather than a reflection of the human experience, a true mirror of the human condition. In this race for popularity, depth and quality often take a backseat.
And what they say, this repudiation of contemporary art as lacking meaning, as lacking a reflection of the human experience, a true mirror of the human condition, is superimposed over the images of the contemporary work Can't Help Myself by Sun Yuan and Peng made in 2016. Though there is a possibility that the Cinema Cartography is taking the images of Can't Help Myself as a way to illustrate an example of a contemporary artwork that reflects the human experience, in the context of that video, I can't help but assume that it's to criticize the artwork for lacking meaning, for lacking a connection to the human experience and the human condition. Now that the context for this video is out of the way, you won't see my face anymore. All you'll see is Can't Help Myself, looped over and over again, with, of course, me talking about it. But before we do that, I want to thank all the new patrons who decided to support the channel in my last video. There's this new feature that a lot of them used, which is to pay annually and get a 10% discount, meaning you can be in the credits at the end of each video for as little as 90 cents per month. I'm not sure if I'll still make videos every week. I might do them every 2 weeks in the future. So for 45 cents per video or more, you can support the channel and be in the credits at the end of each video. Your support helps out tremendously. Thank you. I didn't know much about this artwork before making this video about it. All I knew is that it went viral online at one point, that the robot was trying to contain leaking hydraulic fluid to keep itself alive, that with time, it became harder and harder for it to contain it, and eventually, it died. That turned out to be completely made up, though it is moving, and in terms of creating a compelling narrative for the piece, it's great. It made a lot of people interact, sympathize, and identify with a robot. But the actual work is, honestly, not as touching, but still extremely relevant and reveals themes and ideas which the myth surrounding Can't Help Myself leaves out. Sun Yuan and Peng took a mechanical arm, gave it different commands to animate it, gave it sensors, and gave it the task of containing a deep red fluid on the floor. Since 2016, this fluid was smeared, splashed, and by 2019, its movements became slower, it had more difficulty, it was struggling, and was finally unplugged. For a more detailed history of both the artist's work and Can't Help Myself, you can check out the video made by Deberged321 on the subject. What I want to do is look into the different themes and ideas conveyed by this work and, hopefully, convince you that it's not degenerate. Part 1. Authoritarianism and Surveillance in the Digital Age. The importance of a specific theme or idea in an artwork will vary according to your own experience, your context, and your sensibilities. I'm particularly compelled by the idea of authoritarianism because of the anarchist philosophy I ascribe to, while Sun Yuan and Peng might be sensitive to that topic because they're Chinese artists, and the surveillance they're under might be a bit more asphyxiating than most. However, intuitively on the surface, this artwork isn't about authoritarianism. But if you dig deeper, and by deeper I mean the description of it by the Guggenheim, you'll learn that it's one of its main themes. There is, firstly, a relationship with space, with a micro-territory in a way, not only in the fact that the robot is enclosed in a glass cage, but because it's designed to contain the area covered by the blood-like fluid. This evokes the violence that results from surveilling and guarding border zones. Such visceral associations call attention to the consequences of authoritarianism guided by certain political agendas that seek to draw more borders between places and cultures, and to the increasing use of technology to monitor our environment. This commentary on borders, the mechanized enforcement of the state and the law, the absence of human violence, but the traces of human suffering, is jarring. The robotic arm, the arm of the state, isn't only trying to contain the blood, but is clumsily sweeping it, trying to stop it from spreading under the eyes of hundreds of visitors every day. There is an automized control, a control of populations, a control of how much blood the robot is showing us. While the first popular interpretation of Can't Help Myself is about empathizing with the robot, this makes us see it as a tool of repression, as the embodiment of the use of technology in our increasingly surveilled world, how technology can be used as a tool to, in a way, dehumanize violence, to use violence and legitimize it as one which doesn't have a face and can be more difficult to fight against. A quick example, during the Tiananmen Square protests and massacre, seeing the increasing insubordination of their own army who were sympathetic to the cause of the students, the CCP had to bring in soldiers from outside of Beijing, people who didn't speak the same language or dialect, to carry out the massacre. The very slight chance of insubordination in those who carry out state violence is yet another safeguard against authoritarianism, which technology annihilates. 2. Sisyphus. Sisyphus was a king in Greek mythology who angered the gods. He was punished by being forced to roll a boulder up a hill and watch it roll down. Not too bad of a punishment until you realize that he has to do this eternally. Push the boulder up, watch it roll down. Push it up, watch it roll down. Push it up again and watch it roll down again. Forever. We still feel bad for the robot. I know I do, even if it can symbolize the arm of the state. I'm not the only one. Many also feel bad for it. Maybe you do, and I think it's because we can identify with it. We feel bad for it because it's working all the time, doing a meaningless job. We imagine it, especially later, as being tired. There's no end in sight, no growth, not even a break. It's the repetitive, futile task which sucks the beauty and joy out of life. This is why I decided to show you Can't Help Myself on loop. This trap, this repetition is key to understanding the artwork. And how many of us can say that they don't feel like Sisyphus? How many of us have the privilege to escape the monotony of late-stage capitalism? Yes, we do get breaks on weekends or on Christmas, but once that short break is done, the boulder sits there, waiting for us to push it. There is but one serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. These are the opening lines of Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus. Camus sees in Sisyphus a metaphor for the human condition. Notably, with the death of God, life seems less meaningful than ever. The idea of a god or gods gave humans purpose. We were made by the creator or creators of the universe, and we can develop an intimate relationship with it, him, her, or them. Death is the end of a finite life, but the beginning of an eternal one. There's no reason to fear death, no reason to fear meaninglessness, no reason to even think about it. But God is dead, and we need meaning, but we can't find any. Life is meaningless, and we need to cope with it, give ourselves meaning instead of relying on a supposed higher power with the supposed legitimacy required to give us purpose. Camus calls this tension, this malaise, the absurd. Perhaps to many, the tragedy of Can't Help Myself lies in the malaise, the purposelessness, the struggle Camus underlined through his concept of the absurd. I don't believe Can't Help Myself is meaningless. I don't believe it lacks a reflection of the human experience, that it has the fault of not being a true mirror of the human condition. Its meaning lies both in its representation of authoritarianism and of our Sisyphean lives, but also in other themes which I haven't covered as much, such as our relationship to technology and automation. It's a reflection of the human experience, a true mirror of the human condition, not only exemplified in its portrayal of the repetitive tasks and routines which feeds alienation in our post-industrialist world, but also exemplified in the fact that thousands, if not millions of people have been touched by it, have shared, talked about it, connected to the saddest robot in the world. To say it's meaningless because it just goes for shock value or because it's trying to criticize norms is incredibly reductive and betrays a profound lack of understanding for 21st century art. But making a video on degenerate art considering the history of such a term and using this artwork as an example of it isn't only ignorant, it's concerning. But part of me understands the cinema cartography. I think they're looking for meaning, as we all are, and feel unsatisfied with the answers offered by modernity and its art. I'm unsatisfied. I'd love to find meaning in a God who offers me eternal life, to find meaning in strong traditional values who will reinstall a rigidity and order to our lives, to find meaning in a nation-state, a fatherland, which will make me feel connected to the blood and the soil of my brethren and forefathers, or maybe find meaning in a strong man who will make the trains run on time. These are easy answers, which, yes, can give meaning, but easy answers to find meaning are too often dangerous, extremely dangerous. Meaning isn't supposed to be easy to find, and some will say that there's meaning in finding meaning. Can't Help Myself, for some people, might not have meaning intuitively, as it did for cinema cartography, but a simple search on the Guggenheim's website or on YouTube shows that the artwork does say something. You might need to think a little, you might need to do a bit of research, you might need to discuss about it, but it's that very process of working to find meaning that, at least to me, gives it the most meaning, a meaning we assimilate more, one that we can share and appropriate. More than any of the old art that some YouTuber online wants us to go back to, contemporary art makes you work to find meaning. It forces you to discuss and research. It doesn't tell you what the meaning is. It doesn't ordain it. It makes you look for it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you Axel, Roman Brandel, X-Towns, Jonathan, and all my other patrons for supporting the channel. If you also want to help out, leave a like, subscribe, and check out patreon.com/thecanvas. Thank you.